The View studio was buzzing with energy, a combination of anticipation and subtle tension that could be felt in the air. The cameras rotated smoothly on their tracks, capturing every angle of the familiar roundtable, the lights casting a flawless glow across the polished surface. Joy Behar sat at her usual spot, her notes perfectly stacked, a pen tapping lightly against them, a rhythmic signal of the control she intended to maintain over the segment. Across from her sat Jelly Roll, his presence commanding even in a casual stance. The rapper, known for his unfiltered honesty and unshakable authenticity, exuded a calm intensity, his eyes scanning the room with a quiet awareness that made it clear he was fully prepared for the live broadcast. The audience, a mix of regular fans and invited guests, murmured with excitement, sensing that this interview would be far from ordinary. Joy leaned forward, offering a practiced smile that carried both warmth and authority. "Jelly Roll, it's great to have you here today. Your career has taken off in ways that have captured the public's attention, but with that comes some criticism. Some say your music is too raw, too personal, even controversial. How do you respond to those who feel that way?" Jelly Roll's expression remained steady, his eyes locking on Joy with a directness that immediately shifted the energy of the room. "Joy," he began, voice calm but unwavering, "I make music about my life. My struggles, my mistakes, my reality. If people are uncomfortable with that, that's on them. I'm not here to make everyone comfortable or to sugarcoat my story. That's not what I do." The audience responded almost instinctively, a mixture of murmurs and whispers rippling through the studio. Joy's hand moved subtly to adjust her notes, a faint tightening of her fingers betraying a hint of unease beneath her composed exterior. She attempted to reclaim the conversational territory, leaning in with that signature mix of charm and assertiveness. "I understand that, Jelly, but don't you think your words, and your music, have a responsibility? Millions of listeners take inspiration from you. Couldn't your messages empower without being, well, so intense?" Jelly Roll's smirk widened slightly, a subtle blend of amusement and defiance. "Empowerment doesn't come from pretending life is perfect. I tell the truth, Joy, and the truth isn't always easy to hear. If it stings, that's the point. People need to understand reality, not just a polished version of it." The audience leaned forward, sensing the electric tension building between the two personalities. Cameras zoomed in on micro-expressions, the faint furrow of Joy's brow, the slight narrowing of Jelly Roll's eyes, the almost imperceptible shift in the audience's posture as they prepared for the clash to escalate. Joy, ever the seasoned host, attempted to interject with a softer approach, her voice still polished but edged with a subtle challenge. "Some might say that honesty is one thing, but public humiliation is another. How do you balance telling the truth with not crossing the line?" Jelly Roll leaned back, his posture relaxed yet undeniably commanding. "Crossing the line, maybe, but I've spent my entire life on that edge. I've been judged, criticized, laughed at, and dismissed. I survived by being authentic, not by tiptoeing around people's feelings. If my truth offends, humbles, or surprises, that's not cruelty, that's reality. And reality isn't safe or comfortable." The audience reacted audibly, a mixture of gasps, whispered exclamations, and intrigued nods. Joy's smile tightened, her attempts to guide the conversation back on track meeting an unexpected force. The balance of power in the room was subtly shifting. She opened her mouth, her tone sharper, tinged with defensiveness masked by professionalism. "Well, I suppose one could argue that pushing people too hard can backfire. Public perception is delicate. How do you avoid alienating your fans while being brutally honest?" Jelly Roll's gaze held firm, almost predatory in its focus. "Alienate," he repeated, leaning forward, voice low and deliberate. "Joy, I don't chase approval. I don't cater to fragility. I don't tiptoe around sensitivities because someone might get uncomfortable. My fans respect me because I am real. They don't follow me for comfort, they follow me because I'm honest." The subtle shift in the room was almost tangible. Even the production crew, normally invisible in the background, seemed to pause, sensing the intensity of the live interaction. Cameras captured every nuance, the tightening of Joy's jaw, the slight flicker of unease in her eyes, the quiet but potent presence of Jelly Roll who refused to yield an inch. Joy's attempt to regain control became more deliberate, her voice gaining an edge, a subtle challenge creeping in. "I understand authenticity is important, but sometimes a little tact can make a difference. Not everyone can handle unfiltered truth, especially on live television." Jelly Roll leaned forward, placing his hands lightly on the table, his voice rising slightly, not angry, but commanding attention. Joy, this isn't about tact. It's about truth. If you can't handle it, that's not my responsibility. I've lived through battles you can't imagine, been knocked down and judged unfairly, and I survived because I never compromised who I am. That's the point of today. I'm here to speak my truth, and nothing else. The audience reacted, a mixture of whispers, gasps, and applause punctuating the tension. Joy's posture shifted subtly, her hands gripping the table as she processed the force of Jelly Roll's statements. Her confidence, usually unshakable, wavered as the audience's focus seemed to gravitate toward the rapper's commanding presence. Each word, each pause, each deliberate glance from him carried weight. The balance of power had decisively shifted, leaving Joy momentarily on the defensive. When the cameras returned from the commercial break, the atmosphere in the studio had thickened, almost tangibly. The air was electric, heavy with anticipation, and the audience leaned forward in their seats, murmuring quietly as they exchanged glances. Everyone sensed that what had already been a tense interview was about to explode. Joy Behar attempted to regain her composure, arranging her notes carefully in front of her, smiling politely at Jelly Roll, though the tightness around her eyes betrayed her unease. She had been the dominant force on countless live shows before, but something about the rapper's calm, unflinching presence made her usual tactics feel inadequate. Joy cleared her throat and tried to steer the conversation toward a safer topic. Jelly Roll, let's talk about your outreach and charity work. Many fans admire how you give back to the community. How do you balance your personal struggles with your efforts to inspire others? Jelly Roll didn't flinch. He leaned back slightly, folding his arms, his expression composed but penetrating. Joy, he said, voice steady, I don't balance. I live, I survive, I speak my truth. If my story motivates someone, that's great. But I don't tailor my life to be inspirational or palatable. I'm not here to make anyone comfortable. The audience reacted instantly, some murmuring in surprise, others nodding in agreement. Joy's fingers tightened around her pen, and she took a deliberate breath, attempting to assert control once more. Surely you understand, Jelly, that your words and actions have a wide-reaching impact. Millions are watching, listening. Some might say you have a responsibility to present yourself carefully. Jelly Roll leaned forward, his voice calm but cutting. Careful, that's not my responsibility, Joy. My responsibility is to be real. If people can't handle that, that's on them. You've spent decades in this industry, I get it. You're skilled at spinning, at mediating. But today, that won't work. I'm not here for anyone's comfort. The subtle shift in the studio energy was palpable. The audience sat on the edge of their seats, sensing the inevitable clash. Joy opened her mouth to respond, her usual quick wit ready, but Jelly Roll's gaze held her in place. His presence was magnetic, unyielding, and utterly dominant in the room. She forced a smile, trying to mask the tension creeping into her voice. Well, Jelly, some would argue that honesty can sometimes come across as harsh, even humiliating. Surely you're aware of that. Jelly Roll's response was measured, deliberate, and unmistakably authoritative. Harsh, humiliating, maybe, but let me ask you this, Joy, who decides what's humiliating? You, me, the audience. Truth has no filter, no politeness. If you feel humiliated by it, that's your reaction. I've spent my life being honest, facing criticism, and not backing down. That's how I got here. That's how I survive. The audience murmured again, some gasping, some whispering excitedly. Joy shifted slightly in her chair, her notes suddenly feeling like a futile barrier. The usual rhythm of her hosting, the jokes, the softening, the guiding, was ineffective against Jelly Roll's unshakable confidence. He wasn't just responding, he was controlling the space, commanding attention, and leaving her increasingly on the defensive. Joy tried to reclaim control with a hint of humor, though her voice carried a sharp edge. Well, I suppose some might say that there's a fine line between being candid and being confrontational. How do you know when to stop? Jelly Roll's gaze sharpened, his calm demeanor making his words land with authority. Joy, I don't stop. I don't have that luxury. Life doesn't stop, and neither do my truths. You've been doing live television a long time. You know what it's like to face questions you don't like. But I don't deflect, I don't soften, and I don't step aside to avoid discomfort. If you can't handle that, maybe this isn't the segment for you. The room grew quieter, the tension almost suffocating. The cameras captured every detail, the slight tremor of Joy's hand, the tightening of her jaw, the faint rise of color in her cheeks. Even the crew behind the cameras moved with subdued urgency, knowing they were witnessing a rare moment of live television intensity. The audience leaned forward, captivated, knowing something monumental was unfolding. Joy exhaled sharply, attempting to regain composure, but her next words betrayed a flicker of vulnerability. "Jelly, you're confident, I'll give you that. But confidence doesn't always equal right. Surely there's a point where confrontation crosses the line." Jelly Roll's eyes didn't waver. "Crossing the line, maybe, but today isn't about lines."